As the waves crashed against the hull of the USS George H.W. Bush, President Trump's visit turned into more than just a celebration. It became a statement of power, loyalty, and discipline. With new rules tightening Pentagon security, the message was clear. America's strength depends not just on weapons, but on trust, unity, and the courage to protect what must remain secret. It was an impressive and rare moment being broadcast live from aboard the USS George H.W. Bush, positioned off the coast near Norfolk, Virginia. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of pride and ceremony as President Donald Trump made his visit to Virginia to personally wish the United States Navy a happy 250th birthday. The occasion was one of deep symbolism, representing not just celebration, but also a show of strength and unity within the American military. Joining the president for the event was the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who appeared once again for an exclusive interview from the sidelines of the Navy versus Air Force football game in Annapolis. The focus of his conversation turned quickly toward a serious matter, the question of how the Pentagon intended to protect classified information and keep military secrets truly secret in a time when leaks seemed more frequent than ever. When asked about how serious the issue of leaks was and whether it posed a major problem within the Pentagon, Hegseth did not hesitate. He acknowledged that leaks were both harmful and illegal, a direct violation of the trust and duty expected from anyone handling sensitive or classified material. He emphasized that if someone inside the Department of Defense was providing or passing along information that was classified or not meant for public disclosure, it was a clear problem that demanded attention. To combat this, he explained that the Pentagon was doing everything within its power, implementing strict new protocols to minimize such breaches. Yet, he admitted that the times had changed. They were living in an era where people often engaged in such actions, and even more troubling was that some journalists openly solicited classified information, something he described as disgraceful. It was, in his view, disgusting behavior when journalists actively encouraged individuals to hand over information that was secret and could endanger national security. Hegseth explained that the Pentagon had set up a policy regarding how journalists were expected to conduct themselves within the building, a policy that outlined acceptable behavior and ethical standards for the press. He stated firmly that the Pentagon took these matters with the utmost seriousness, and that whenever a problem was identified, it would be dealt with directly and decisively. The tone of his words made it clear that he was not speaking in vague generalities. There was real determination behind the Pentagon's new stance on leaks and the handling of classified data. When the discussion turned to potential solutions, a question was raised about whether the Pentagon might begin using polygraphs as a tool to detect and prevent leaks. Hegseth replied that the department was prepared to use any and all tools necessary to maintain security and integrity. He made it clear that within the ranks, whether uniformed service members or civilian employees, leaking information could never be tolerated. The rules were to be strict and non-negotiable. "We're not playing games at the Pentagon," he said firmly, describing how the new approach would focus on tightening access, controlling movement, and making sure that no one had the freedom to roam around the building unchecked. He explained that previously, reporters who covered the Pentagon had been able to move freely throughout the building. They could walk the halls without a badge or escort, enter offices, and speak to anyone they wished. Such openness, while convenient for journalists, presented a major security risk since classified information could be visible or overheard in unexpected places. That policy, he said, was over. The Pentagon was introducing new rules modeled more closely after those of the White House. At the White House, one could not simply wander freely from room to room. Every movement was monitored and controlled. Similarly, now within the Pentagon, press members would have designated areas they could access, but beyond those spaces, they would need a badge and an escort. He pointed out that this wasn't about restricting freedom, but about ensuring security, something any reasonable American citizen would consider common sense. If a journalist wished to move around the building, they would need to follow the proper protocols and respect the boundaries set in place. He mentioned that the Pentagon press corps might complain or squeal about these new restrictions, but the department's focus was on protecting sensitive information, not on appeasing reporters. The military leadership intended to make sure journalists could still do their jobs, but within a system that maintained order and protected national secrets. In Hegseth's view, the American public supported these measures wholeheartedly because they reflected basic logic and responsibility. The Pentagon would continue to allow journalists to report freely, but they would have to operate under the same security expectations as anyone else in a classified environment. The discussion then turned toward trust, whether the Secretary trusted the vast number of people under his command. The Pentagon, after all, was one of the largest departments in the government, with hundreds of thousands of service members and civilian employees working across various divisions. When asked if he trusted those in his department, Hegseth's answer was thoughtful yet confident. He expressed that every person who served, whether in uniform or as a civilian, had raised their right hand and taken an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. That oath, he said, was sacred. It was a promise to uphold the laws, the integrity, and the values that define the nation. Of course we trust them, he said, until someone gives us a reason not to. The idea was not to assume guilt, but to expect professionalism and loyalty from those who had chosen to serve. Hegseth admitted that although he himself no longer wore the uniform, he once had, and that experience gave him a deep appreciation for those who continued to serve. He spoke proudly of the men and women who put on that uniform every day, those who dedicated themselves to protecting the country and carrying out their mission with honor. Trust, he said, was earned through commitment and discipline, and he had no doubt that the overwhelming majority of those serving were individuals of high character and integrity. He emphasized that the few who might break that trust did not represent the whole, and that his role was to support and lead those who continue to uphold the standards of service. He shared that earlier he had given a speech about the importance of maintaining high standards, physical, moral, and professional. He talked about the need to raise the bar within the ranks, not to criticize, but to inspire those serving to continue meeting the highest expectations. He made clear that the vast majority of service members were extraordinary people, filled with integrity and purpose, and that the military's success depended on their continued dedication. He said he felt proud to represent them and to speak on their behalf, knowing that they were among the best men and women the country had to offer. The conversation briefly took a lighter turn when an unusual question came up regarding an account on X, formerly Twitter, that attempted to predict military activity based on how busy local pizza places near the Pentagon were. The idea was that when the military ordered a lot of pizzas late at night, it signaled that something significant, such as an airstrike, might be about to happen. The suggestion was made humorously that perhaps the Pentagon could simply use its cafeteria next time to avoid suspicion. Hegseth laughed at the mention of the account and admitted he was aware of it. He joked that he had considered ordering large amounts of pizza on random nights just to confuse those who tried to track military movements that way. Some Friday night, he said with a grin, when you see a bunch of Domino's orders, it might just be me placing them on the app to throw everyone off. The humor in his response revealed a lighter side of military operations, the awareness that even the smallest public actions could be interpreted as clues by observers online. He explained that while it might seem amusing, the Pentagon did, in fact, monitor such indicators closely. Open-source intelligence, public data, and even civilian activity could sometimes reveal more than intended. That was one reason why operations like Midnight Hammer had succeeded in the past, because the military understood both open-source and classified systems and knew how to control information effectively. Hegseth emphasized that the government had unique tools and capabilities to manage and protect sensitive operations, ensuring that no external observer could accurately anticipate military actions simply by watching for signs like food deliveries or increased late-night activity. He mentioned that President Trump often reminded them that there was only one military in the world capable of doing what the United States military could do. It was a statement of unmatched strength and responsibility. Hegseth said that being entrusted with overseeing such a force was a profound and humbling duty. He felt the weight of ensuring that the leaders within the military, from the highest-ranking generals to the newest recruits, were the kind of leaders the service members deserved. Leadership, in his view, was not about title or rank, but about character, consistency, and accountability. The standards expected of a four-star general should be the same as those expected of a private. Everyone, regardless of position, had to live by the same principles of integrity and discipline. He added that this renewed focus on discipline and accountability wasn't limited to the top ranks. It extended to senior enlisted leaders and top non-commissioned officers as well. President Trump visited the USS George H.W. Bush to honor the Navy's 250th anniversary. while Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth discussed new steps to stop leaks at the Pentagon. He said stricter rules would protect national security. Reporters would now need escorts, and anyone leaking information would face serious punishment. Hegseth emphasized that most people in the Defense Department were loyal and honorable, serving their oath with integrity. He added that restoring discipline in the military was essential, comparing it to fixing small cracks before they break bigger things. True strength, he said, came from unity and duty, not slogans about diversity. The Navy's 250 years of service reflected those same values of loyalty, courage, and honor, the core of America's military power and the key to keeping the nation strong.